Hello, all my Homestead Roadies. This is Homestead Road Podcast, and I'm your host, Thomas Wallach and David O'Neill. And today we have with us Matt Wieser from Wieser Company. This is a podcast where we discuss selling your home as is, real estate, and anything else that relates to it. So basically, everything. Homestead Road wants you to feel the joy of selling your house as is. Also, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Again, today we just want to say thank you, Matt, for jumping on our podcast. We really do appreciate you jumping on here. So today, really, we just want to know a little bit about what Wieser Company is. Why don't you...
So my father started the business back in 1969, and I bought him out in 2012. So as a kid being, boss's son, you kind of work in the business type of deal.
Proud father.
Yeah, exactly. So I went off to school, and after college, I became an undertaker. So my dad primarily dealt with funeral directors, and so what better way?
So hold on one second, quick.
Sure.
So the company that you're working for, just so everyone knows.
Sure. Okay, so we make. Sorry.
No. This is fine. This is perfect. Yeah.
So I'm nervous, but anyway.
That's okay. We could go back to like birth and start there.
You want to do that? Okay. So I'm left on the doorstep of a convent. So my dad makes the concrete boxes that the casket goes into, and he goes out to the cemeteries and dresses up the grave with the tent and the chairs and lowering device. So our job was to install the burial vault, also put up the tent and chairs, but also lower the deceased into the grave and close up the grave. So growing up with that, I was involved in that, drove truck, blah, blah, blah. But the better way to get an idea of who you're serving is to become actually your client. So after graduating from Stout and getting a biology degree, I got accepted to the University of Minnesota Medical School to be a pediatric cardiologist. And then after that, found out to be 12 more years of school, and I said, I'm not I just can't. I can't do that. And then she goes, well, you're actually a licensed apprentice in the state of Wisconsin. Why don't you become a funeral director? And I was like, well, how long is that? Yeah. They go, 18 months. And then sign me up. I got this. So after that, I was working in the industry, and then there's a change in ownership with my dad's competitor, and they decided to use my dad at the drop of a hat. So I decided to leave funeral directing and help my dad out. And so right now, currently, we do about 4,100 funerals a year. We service Fort Snelling National Cemetery.
Oh, wow.
But then also, as with any industry, there's always highs and lows. So our lows are during the summer. So my dad decided to dive into what's called precast steps or precast stoops or concrete work. And so
it's already in the concrete business.
Exactly.
So it makes kind of sense, yeah.
And the precast is the same as what the burial vaults are.
Oh, really?
They're precast.
Yeah.
So he dove into that. So during the summer months, it's all really slow. And so in order to offset the slow season, we dove into precast steps. So now we go into people's houses and remove their front stoops and replace it with precast. And also any sidewalks or whatever it may be, driveways, patios, that type of stuff. And we pour them a new sidewalk or a patio or whatever it may be. So that's kind of what we do here in the metro. And I just bought my dad out in 2012.
All right.
So
from both companies?
No, from just the one up in here in Inver Grove.
All right.
Yeah. And so he sold the one in Stewartville to my cousin.
Yeah.
And my brother Todd bought the one down in La Crescent. So I'm one of 12 adopted children.
Oh, wow.
And
wow,
so,
that's a huge family, yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
So
I'm struggling with 6 in my family.
Call us the poster family for the United Way because we're Black, Asian, even one of my brothers is in a wheelchair.
Oh, wow.
He had the cord wrapped around his neck when he was born.
Oh my gosh.
So he has cerebral palsy. And so Hispanic, Jamaican, even white. So it just was, growing up was really interesting.
Diverse, very diverse.
Very diverse.
That's really
in a
cool.
town of only 4,000 people.
Wow.
So
I grew
people
up
know who you were in that town.
Which town did you grow up in?
It's called La Crescent, Minnesota.
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
Okay.
down by La Crosse,
right by La
Wisconsin.
Crosse, yeah.
So then my dad was one of 18 children.
Whoa. Adopted too?
No, they were all natural born.
Oh,
and then my grandma lost 4
Yeah.
naturally. So they could have been 22. But Grandpa had a 2,500 acre farm. We had 1,200 head of cattle. I mean, it was just, so that's what you did on the weekends. You went out there and, milk cows and blah, blah, blah. And so it was kind of a crazy growing up.
Yeah.
So the last wedding we went to, there was 368 Wiesers.
All related.
All related.
Yeah, that is
and that's only just first cousins.
Yeah.
This is like, what? But back to your story about, you knew everybody in town, so it was like, okay, everybody knew who you were. But when you said your last name, Wieser, you're like, you don't look, oh, that's right. And my dad goes by Dick. You're Dick's boy. It's like, yeah, I am. Yeah, I'm not blood hair, blue eyes. Nope, not even close. But yeah, we've had a very good response here in the metro area, and it's been a good run.
That's really good.
That's awesome.
And how long have you been in the metro area then?
Been in the metro area since 1982.
All right.
My dad actually infiltrated the metro area with a couple cemeteries and funeral homes here in the metro, and they ran them out of Rochester.
All right. Well.
And then till I came and actually had a physical presence, have we done that many, and also taken over Fort Snelling. So we've had Fort Snelling since 2005.
Now, is that Fort Snelling you have for just the vault side of it, or is that for funeral directing too?
Both for the servicing. Yep, and we take care of all the veterans out there at Fort Snelling. So
that's awesome.
That's really cool.
Been a very, very interesting, yet proudful, type of deal for all of my crew.
Yeah, so, I can imagine.
Yeah,
that's really cool. So, why don't you tell us maybe a little bit about? I mean, obviously we know why someone would go to your service, or like why they would go to your company, I guess you could say. But I mean, it sounds like specifically you're building a precast for a coffin.
Right.
So why would someone need that?
So it's not necessarily state law. It's cemetery law. So each cemetery is different. So we currently service also the Jewish funeral home in town.
Oh, you do?
With Hadref Epstein.
All right.
And so a lot of I shouldn't say a lot, but some of their cemeteries do not require an outer burial container. And a lot of it is culture or their traditions.
Yeah.
Jews like to be buried traditional Jews like to be buried by the sundown of the following day.
Yep.
And then they want to go back to the earth.
Yeah, yep.
And there's also another green cemetery in the metro, Mound Cemetery in Brooklyn Center, that does not require, they don't even require an outer burial container. Yeah. They'll actually bury the deceased right in the ground.
Well, why would you have a place that requires that? What would be the reason for that?
It's literally aesthetics.
Oh, it is? Yeah.
Because the proverbial 6 feet under, it is 6 feet under.
Oh, it is.
It is. And then what it does is that box acts as a frost footing. So the aesthetics of the cemetery are going to be flat all the way across.
Yeah.
There's going to be no settling, because if you don't use one, the body continually settles through the ground, and your perpetual care, it settles. If you've been into some of the older cemeteries, like in St. Paul, the Calvary cemeteries, the Oakland cemeteries, so on and so forth. If you look in the older section, it looks like a roller coaster, because each grave you can see where the deceased is buried, because it's continually setting.
Whoa, I never even thought about that.
Yeah.
I just figured they weren't taking care of that.
No, no. It's a matter of they want to do that for perpetual care. So when you are buried, there's the opening closing charge, which is an addition to your perpetual care fund. So your perpetual care fund is what takes care of the cemeteries. By requiring the outer burial container, it decreases on the amount of manpower that's needed in the cemeteries in order to fund for that perpetual care.
Gotcha. So there's some costs offset.
Yep. Right. Exactly. Okay. Exactly.
Do you find that people are more so coming to you to get these vaults after the person's already passed away, or do you find a lot of people kind of pre-plan?
So with my involvement with the funeral homes, it is strictly on an at-need basis.
It is, right.
Yep. See, I contract through either Tommy or Dave's funeral home. It all depends on who uses me. They may pre-need it, but essentially I'm always on an at-need basis.
All right.
And so that is like at the drop of a call from you guys as far as an order goes. Then that's what happens, is that I leave from that, and it's always usually at the time of need. You may pre-need them with your pre-need counselors, which means is like a a meeting where you go over your funds and so on and so forth, and put all your funds or trying to qualify for medical assistance and do it into what's called like an irrevocable trust or a spend down in order to qualify for medical assistance.
Working like with a pre-planning consultant.
Exactly. Or a pre-need counselor or a cemetery officiant or something of this sort. And that helps out in far as you qualifying for medical assistance.
Oh, wow.
So...
Now, the precast that you have, are they strictly concrete? Is it marble?
Nope.
Like that?
Usually it's always precast concrete.
It is, right.
And that's what we kind of have a background in. And so my grandpa started Al's Concrete back in La Crescent. And then there were 3 brothers out of the 18 that didn't really get along within the shop.
Oh, wow.
And so my
3 out of 18 is a pretty good one, actually.
So they gave the 3 boys, which is Dick, my dad, Joe, my uncle, and Charlie. He gave them all money in order to start their own. Charlie was fortunate enough in order to take over the Al's Concrete name, and then my uncle Joe started Wieser Concrete over there in Maiden Rock, Wisconsin, and then my dad started Wieser Precast down there in La Crescent. So we're all, if you're ever driving in the highway and you see all those median barriers, look on them. They may be stamped with Wieser because that is my cousin's business. So he has the contracts for different people, and then they put all those median barriers. You can stamp all your name around it all you want, but it's also got to have the Wieser name because that's where you got it from. And then my dad is the one that did with the burial vaults in the precast steps. And so if you ever are in need of a front stoop or a removal, then that's who you call as my dad. And if you needed the median barrier or ag products, then you call my Uncle Joe. So it's just like 2 different perspectives and 2 different opposite ends of the spectrum, but yet all still within concrete. So we're hard-headed per se. So.
It's pretty crazy to think about, where it started and how it kind of all went. I mean, that's really cool. Now, let me ask you about your funeral director side.
Okay.
What is it that you do as far as a funeral director? So we know that with the vaults, I mean, that is, it's basically you're putting a casket into it, and that is precast concrete, but so the funeral director side, what is it that you do with that?
So the funeral director side, I graduated from University of Minnesota in 1999, and then after that, I got a job here in the Metro and service as a funeral director, as a full-blown funeral director. Typically in the funeral industry, your first year to 2 years, you're usually in the back room.
Embalming
and all that
the
stuff.
start of art, the dressing, the casketing, the cosmetizing.
Let me ask you though, like your first couple times doing that, like is it
so,
tough or?
So for the record, I'm not white, but when it came about that I had my first one, I did turn white, and they said if you could ever get as white as you could, that happened right now. So, I do everything. Everything from arranging to casketing, cosmetizing, embalming.
Really?
Anything pertaining to the funeral industry I can do. I still keep my license current because there are people that move out of state. And they want to move their loved ones with them. In fact, I just got back from Salt Lake City, Utah. I did one down to Sam Houston, which is in San Antonio, Texas. I've been out to Wilmington, Delaware. I've been out to Phoenix. And I've also done a couple up to Canada, where they actually physically take the concrete box that the casket goes into, and we move it from wherever it's at to where they want it to go.
Closer place.
Correct.
To
closer, whether it be coming back from or going out of the metro to where they are now. And
interesting.
So, and you need a licensed director in order to do that because you're crossing state lines with human remains.
Wow.
And so you got to
Sounds
get
like
all
a
you got to get all the
thing,
you got to get all the permits and you got to get all the regulations and so on and so forth, and then contract through Tommy Funeral Home out there in Wilmington, Delaware, in order to accept the remains and also stand graveside when we put them back in the ground.
So do you have to be there then when they're exhuming the body?
I physically do it.
Yeah. Oh, you do it.
I
You dig it all up.
We dig it and we take it all up and we take it to where they want it to go.
Oh, wow.
The new trend is to take them out of the ground. Get a court order, of course, in order to open up the casket, take the deceased out of the casket, put it into another container in order to be cremated, then it's easier for the family in order to move around the country because of the cremated remains. They can take them themselves. Yeah. So it's just a different way of doing it, but yet, we still do that.
I mean, I could probably go on for a couple hours on this.
But that's why I keep my license
and
current.
It's so interesting. I mean, it is.
And
it is
a lot of people don't.
I don't think I could do it. I mean, that is
right.
That is tough. I mean,
it
would be tough.
It does.
I mean, I've seen like my share of family members pass away and things like that. Right. But then, I mean, to then have to do the embalming. I mean, like what goes into the embalming side of things?
So in February of 2009, I lost my brother. Because we're all adopted, we have no family history as far as medical diseases go. Yeah. And my brother ended up having Wilson's disease, which is the accumulation of copper in your body. So anything like a metal, the lead, that type of mineral in your body acts as a poison. So Wilson's disease either affects your brain, your liver, or your kidneys. His was his liver and his kidneys. So it actually shut his body down. Wow. And so he got diagnosed. Well, he got diagnosed in 2002, but he went out to Las Vegas and became a personal trainer. So he played football for NDSU.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
Standout, blah, blah, blah. Got recruited by a couple teams. I think it was the Bears, Dallas, and Buffalo. So he went to that farm, whatever. So he went to that, but he was a tight end. But he was only like 6'4" and 240. Well, most tight ends are like 6'8" and 360. So he's a little small for that. But anyway, he went to Vegas after that, didn't get recruited, and started the Arena Football League. And so he didn't get accepted with that, so he ended up being a personal trainer. The end of the story is that he left my mom and dad's insurance, and he had to become an independent contractor. Well, his medications would have been roughly $3,000 a month. Wow. And so he couldn't afford that. And so when he did get sick on February 19th, 2009, and actually went into the hospital in Las Vegas, they deemed him non-compliant because he wasn't buying the actual medications. He was taking some knockoff brands. And then he got sick, and my parents tried to get him back here to anybody that would take him on a gratis case for a liver transplant. Well, Mayo took him back in. My mom and dad had to literally rent a medical Learjet to fly him from Las Vegas to Rochester. Wow. Well, my mother's an RN. Yeah. And so she flew with him, got him back. Yeah. Through the night, all of us were taking the flights back, to be with him, so on and so forth. But then as he got back, he was going through all these tests. And when he got back to Mayo, they went through all the tests, passed him with flying colors. Yeah. Got there at 8 o'clock that morning and said, you know what? He's good. Yeah. So 8 o'clock they walked into the room, told us that give us 8 hours, and he'll have a brand new liver, everything will be fine. Oh. 1:30 developed an infection and died at 7:30. Oh my gosh. So it was just like the roller coaster of that was just, wow. So, but no, he was a very special type of guy. That's crazy. But your question as far as being a funeral director, that makes you a better funeral director. Being able to experience that and kind of get an idea of what these families are actually going through.
That emotional side of it too.
And so, but the nice part about my crew is that they're not trained by somebody that has been in the industry for 35 years. They're being trained by an actual funeral director to understand what they need to do, how they need to do it, and conduct themselves in a professional manner in order to adequately serve these families with the deceased and get the job done. So
wow, that is very interesting. Yeah, man, that is just crazy. I could go on forever.
So I bet you guys learned something. Even though you know me, you're like, this is something I had no idea that you ever did.
I mean, it's an interesting industry because even though we're all going in that direction, we're all going to die at some point. That's like the one thing nobody ever wants to talk about.
Exactly.
And so, it's interesting to hear that side of things and to hear what goes in that industry and to think of even doing that type of work. Like I can't even.
So if this is a podcast and people are listening to it, if you are experienced and I, sorry for your loss, it's all about closure. Yeah. And so there's something to be said because we're the human race. We are touchy-feely.
Yeah.
We need to see that.
Yeah.
We need to experience that. And then if you do bury or you do cremate, I'm impartial to both.
Yeah.
Personally, I'm going to be buried at Lakewood Cemetery there in Minneapolis. But anyway.
I'll find out.
Yeah, exactly. We've got our stuff together.
Yeah.
But seeing the body, also at the gravesite for our guys, watch it lowered. Close it all up. Hence the closing part. You want to make sure everything's taken care of. Do it in that fashion. There is a process, and there is a way of dealing with it. And with that, see, I took care of my brother.
Yeah.
I actually embalmed my brother.
Oh, wow.
I actually cosmetized my brother. I actually dressed my brother.
Wow.
So, and then took him from the service to the cemetery in the Cadillac hearse. Blah 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 blah. Blaring Tupac the whole way. But aside, but exactly. So it was very healing for me.
That is really good.
Just to take care of him in that fashion. Plus, he was jaundiced.
Right.
Well, he was jaundiced,
Yeah.
which means, the Billy Rubin. So formaldehyde turns Billy Rubin to Billy Verde, which is green. So he would have turned out to be the Incredible Hulk if he didn't do the proper embalming. So I worked on him for almost 6 hours.
Wow.
And so in which a typical embalming takes an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. So we did the extra time, made sure he looks good, so that my biggest fear was Mom and Dad were going to close the casket because he was so green.
Yeah.
Or somebody did it, he would turn green. So in that aspect, I had to take care of him because I was afraid Mom and Dad would not have the closure that is needed if we would have closed the casket because they did a good job. So.
That's crazy. Well, thank you for your work. That is tough. I mean, I'm glad there's people, like you that are doing that that have that that emotional side to it. And they've had to deal with it through, sadly through your own family, but that way too exactly what other families are.
But we grew up with it. I mean, my job when I was a kid was my dad would get the bolt where it needed to be, but my job was to there was a bin, get all the equipment from there and carry it up from where we're at to the graveside. So that was my job, growing up. So I always knew what a casket was, what a funeral director was, what a hearse was. This type of stuff where most kids, they look at it and go, look at Mom and Dad, that's a funny car. And I'm like, no, that's actually a hearse. Well, what do they do with hearses? Well, they take that and then, but that leads to a conversation. And have that conversation, expose people to that type of stuff. And that's why I love talking about it, and that's why I'm here today, is just to tell people about talking about it.
Yeah.
It's something, like you said, it's something that people don't want to talk about. They don't want to experience.
Yeah.
Right.
Nobody does. Yeah.
But, because your grandma.
Yep.
And so it's something that you haven't had to experience, but now that you've actually had that experience, you're like, dude, I understand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, well, I lost my grandma, whatever it was. And so it's like, okay, all right, welcome to the club.
Yeah.
Not a club I really wanted a membership in,
no.
but you know what? I'm here part of the club. So
It's going to happen eventually.
exactly, and we're all going to have to experience it, but the more that we talk about it, the more that we have the experiences of it and know what to expect.
Yeah.
And that's why it's helpful. And then there's always people that you can talk to as far as getting information on what to do, how to do it. And so it sounds like you guys kind of help that a little bit with that side of it, or no?
We do at times, yeah. We have, people will call us. We have people that call us or they've inherited a parent's house or a spouse has passed and things like that. So we do that. That's kind of why we had talked to you before.
Right,
because there's a little bit of a correlation. We want to make sure that we can pass people back and forth as necessary when they need something. You provide a service that sometimes our people need and probably vice versa.
Exactly.
But yeah, we do deal with this. We had a closing the other day with a really nice lady who just had her husband pass. But it was time, and she had to let the house go. She needed the house to sell so she could do the next steps. But it was extremely emotional.
Yeah.
It's extremely emotional. But she's pushing it through, and she felt like this was a big piece of closure. The house is now out of the next set of hands. She knows it's going to be taken care of and things like that. And so it is a lot about closure.
And then so from that side of it, with the funeral director side, we experienced a lot of people that were in the same boat of what you're talking about, and getting them to, kind of get an idea of what to do. Because a lot of times it's kind of like the ashes on the shelf.
Yep.
What do we do with them?
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
What are we going to do?
Yeah.
And then everybody's kind of like, okay, we're 3 brothers. What are we going to do with it? How do we,
Yeah, what do you do? Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
it's like, okay, how do we go about it?
Yeah.
So in your aspect, it's helpful on that end, and then on my aspect, it's helpful with just getting information. What to do, how to do it, when to do it, and what is the ultimate outcome
Yeah.
after you get done with it.
Thank you, Matt,
You're
again
welcome. Thank you for having me.
jumping on this podcast. And that's it for today's podcast. I want to thank all you Homestead Roadies out there for listening and watching Matt Wieser talk about Wieser Companies. And we also just want to say thank you again for joining us. And again, Homestead Road wants you to feel the joy of selling your home as is. Feel free to also like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Thank you.
Thanks.